Welcome everyone back to WCU Entertainment Review. I'm your host Jimmy, and this is Dylan. He's like the points in Whose Line Is It Anyway? He just doesn't matter.
One of these days I'm going to actually be able to introduce myself.
Probably not. So Dylan, what's on tap today?
Okay, today we have a Halloween episode. As you can see by all the lovely decorations, they're actually here, people. I swear, you just can't see them. They're behind you.
Or they're a ghost, you figure it out.
Yeah, one of those two. Ooh.
Don't never do that again, please. Alright, so today guys, we have a bunch of horror-themed topics to talk about, and we will be moving into games first. We're going to move on to the gaming now, and this is Dylan still with me, but on our left is Ross. He's from a land down under.
That's Australia.
Close enough.
It's not even the same continent.
Dylan, what's going on in the gaming industry?
Well, there's been a recent trend with horror games having a resurgence, which is really nice. You have games like Amnesia, Outlast, PT being made by these very small developers, making large profits, and touching a market that's been completely ignored for the most part by the major industry people. Any ideas on that?
Well, you know, you're starting to see more of a evolution in terms of like Alien Isolation, Evil Within, both released in the last month. You know, these horror games, they're an interesting concept because, you know, they can break away from what just a horror genre does in movies because, you know, they're longer, you can do more with them because you're more visually able to do stuff with them. So it's interesting to see where they go.
Yeah, and having played PT, it's a really good horror game because there's a lot of jump scares and you're not really expecting most of the stuff to happen.
You know, it's funny. I was playing Ghostbusters once. I got jump scared by a comedy game that had Ghost in it.
You got jump scared by a game that had the word ghost in it.
It was 2 a.m. in the morning and it was dark. What am I supposed to do? This little spider creature comes popping out of nowhere and you're like, oh man, what is that? And then you're like, oh, it's a spider.
Did Bill Murray,
Just jump on it. It's a spider.
Did Bill Murray's witty retort scare you too?
No, but he did make fun of me.
I bet he did.
But let's be honest here. I think this game genre is gonna grow as we move forward this year. And you know, I honestly think there's more opportunities. I know we've talked about it off camera. I think a great idea would be kind of like a Mortal Kombat version of like these horror classic characters like Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers and, you know, Freddy Krueger. Kind of like, because Freddy Krueger was even in the last Mortal Kombat game as a downloadable content. But you know, I think those type of games would be kind of a good way to grow the whole video gaming industry.
Would we want to add like werewolf and vampire and Frankenstein? Just go for complete ham and add all the villains.
Oh yeah, I mean that would be so much fun.
I would definitely play those games, yeah.
I mean, especially since, you know, Mortal Kombat's one of the biggest selling, and, you know, Street Fighter at one point was, not anymore, but, I mean, I think those would be interesting things. That's just my opinion, but you guys want to move on to movies next? And, you know, it's been an interesting weekend because Ouija actually made $20 million. Number one movie this weekend, and, you know, you see a lot of these movies coming out now that are less of the mainstream horror genre that we're all used to, like Friday the 13th and stuff like Leprechaun is back. But we also had movies this year like Oculus, which was pretty good. And, you know, it's kind of weird how the horror genre is going.
Yeah, I think they're going more towards these small kind of, oh, it's just a single family, not against any one single Jason Voorhees, like you were saying, or any crazy serial killer, more spiritual and supernatural spooky stuff, which is a very scary to most people.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, what do you think, Erica?
I think that since they are now competing with horror TV shows as well, that they are trying to branch out. I mean, with Ouija, it's a game that everybody has basically played at one point or another, and now there's a horror movie about it.
That actually is very true, because I didn't even think about the fact that you do have these horror shows now, especially like Bates Motel and all these shows that are kind of going into that genre, and, you know, it makes it harder for these movie producers to make these condensed 2-hour movies or even less. What do you think, Ross?
Yeah, the condensed movies are probably, it's harder for them to fit more into it. So, I mean, it's probably a lot more competition.
Exactly. I mean, and the thing with these competitions is, I think with a lot of these more legendary characters, I think they kind of like overstayed their welcome because, you know, basically at this point, when Jason Voorhees is at the point where you can't kill him, there's nothing really scary about him anymore because you know where it's going. Like that's why I think like movies like Scream in the '90s got so popular is because they mocked those type of characters who were just these indestructible forces. I mean, me and Dylan were talking about this earlier. Actually, Ross was with us too. We were talking about they should bring in like Superman and just do like these crossovers like Superman versus Jason Voorhees. I mean, who wouldn't want to watch that movie? I'd watch it.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
I'd love to see the props like a 3D machete. Like think about it, a kryptonite machete for Jason Voorhees. That would be so cool.
And it's like we said, Superman uppercuts Jason Voorhees into space, and you basically create Jason 10 goes into space. It explains the whole movie.
It
And it gives you a
except
sequel.
why it was made.
Exactly. I mean, I think the whole horror genre is going to become this, smaller sector where these smaller films are going to start kind of, becoming more of the forefront because the older films are kind of moving out, and until these characters can be like changed and more interesting. Because I mean, remember, did any of you guys ever see Jason versus
Yeah, there's
Freddy?
only
Yeah,
so
I
much
saw
you
that.
can do with that.
Yeah,
You have
it
to
was-
be more creative now.
It was bad.
They always get in these like little back and forth fights with each other, and like, do you remember how like they clearly told you there was going to be a sequel at the end where they had the like Jason carrying Freddy's head, but they never did it. It was just like, well,
Yeah.
we got Jason Voorhees and Freddy on camera, so we're done.
Money made, people, except I think that movie actually bombed.
No, it made
I think
money.
it did, didn't it?
No, it made money. I can
it?
tell you, it made a lot of money because people are interested
guess,
in the
yeah,
characters.
it's
They
the
love the old characters. It's just
two big
those
franchises.
concepts alone just don't work anymore because it's like I said. How many times can you see Jason Voorhees chasing somebody in the woods?
Well, apparently 10 times
True.
at least.
Or you can have Rob Zombie remake it and make it terribly, but
Well,
that's just my
That's
opinion.
Rob Zombie.
It's dark and edgy. It's like Tim Burton. But
So edgy.
we are going to move on to the TV segment, and we will be right back with you. Guys, right now we're going to move into TV and the horror genre. And as you guys, we've talked about in the previous segment, TV and horror is actually growing. You have the Walking Dead series, which is probably one of the biggest shows on cable. Millions of fans. It's really big right now. And then you have shows like Sleepy Hollow on network television. And what you guys told me you don't really understand what the show is, and it's this crazy show about like the old tale about Ichabod Crane and the headless horseman, and it's so complicated because you have this supposedly brewing war between the sides of good and evil, and I don't even know how to explain it because it's that complicated. And as these shows keep developing, you have Bates Motel and all these other former horror movies becoming TV shows now. It'll be interesting to see if these shows can continue and if they'll actually be, if they're more of a trend or if they're just a, thing in the sand that won't be gone in a few months.
I mean, you have shows like Z Nation as well, also going for the more science fiction, comedy, hokey stuff. And it's just a diversification of just what's been on TV programming. And it seemed that there's been a market with horror movies being more and more serial made, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That they're thinking, there's a market here we can make a ton of money off of. And they are. American Horror as well is on its third or fourth season going strong. There's so many shows out there that you would never see 10, 15 years ago. Do you have anything?
Well, we were talking about how a lot of the competition now is between horror movies and now horror TV shows. And I feel like with the horror TV show, it gives you that like 12 to 24 episodes to build your characters and build your plot. And I feel like that's what we're looking for now. We're not looking for that cheap thrill. We're looking for that suspense. And that show that has the 24 episodes is going to give you that where the 2-hour movie won't.
And that's the true, because the thing is, I know I have friends who, they're into the big cons and horror cons. These horror cons are getting huge. Like, they're getting up there with like Comic-Con, where there's like going for all weekend, and they have these old horror movie legends going up there, and they're doing these like big panels and stuff. And now you're bringing these TV shows on, and like you said, these are developed characters that like instead of just having Jason Voorhees, this lifeless body, you can kind of look into someone like Norman Bates and the Bates Motel, and you can kind of develop why this character is the way he is, and that's more interesting to me instead of a 2-hour movie where you're rushing to kind of get everything through. And as these TV shows develop, it'll be interesting to see if they become their own genre or if they're kind of like Twilight, where it was here for like a couple months. And I know Twilight was a horror film, but
it might have been.
It was a horrible film, but
it was horror literature, that's for sure.
That's true, but it had those vampire characters, and like everybody took. It was like kind of taking what we're talking about here, where they're taking these supernatural elements and kind of tying them into these TV shows and making them bigger. And now these shows are becoming more horror films, and even like I've read MTV's gonna do a thing on Scream.
No, Scream.
Scream, like the Scream, and like the character's not gonna be allowed to have the stupid mask that we all know, and it's kind of funny how like these horror icons are like these horror icon movies and films are kind of like becoming each other. Like I think at one point you'll probably see these TV shows revert to movies. I mean that's crazy to me, but I think we're going to close it out today.
Yeah, thank you for watching our first annual Halloween episode.
Yeah, our first annual Halloween episode. Yeah, maybe next year we'll have some decorations or a pumpkin.
Or maybe costumes even. That would have been nice.
Why? Costumes suck.
Who hurt you?
I don't want to talk about it. We'll see you next week.